Rainbow Reflections, Book 1, A Kind of Magic, Chapter 16, A Human Body. Zin woke up quite happy on Triz Day. Her dreams had been pleasant, reflecting her test victories the previous day. She could do it. She could get through school without magic. She hurried over to her desk, staring down at the wand sitting on top of it. I wish you worked for me, she thought a bit sadly. And I know one day you will, once I actually get my magic, but I don't have it right now, and we can't connect yet. Her eyes shifted to the objects sitting on the desk beside the wand. They were mostly souvenirs from other parts of the world. Zin smiled softly as she examined them. These objects, on the other hand, they've already got a bit of magic in them. Not the most powerful magic, of course, since enchantments don't last forever. But what if I could use these objects instead of real magic? There was a sudden knock on her door, and she jumped in fright. She had forgotten to scream out the morning greeting. But then again, she checked the rainbow clock on her wall. It was still rather early, even for her.
Zin, you up?
Zin frowned and opened the door to see her father standing just outside. He smiled at her as she stepped aside to let him in. He closed the door behind him as Zin stood a bit awkwardly.
I'd like to talk to you,
Hyakti murmured. About what? Zin asked in a snappish way. She hadn't forgotten their last one-on-one conversation.
Your magic,
Hyakti said simply. Before Zin could make any sort of interjection, he continued.
I spoke to both Khurshid and Fern yesterday. They said you did well on your test, but that you didn't do any magic.
Ren was the one who enchanted the potion, Zin pointed out, trying to keep the concern out of her voice. Potions can only have the one enchantment, at least at the level we're at. You know that. She offered to do it.
Hyakti nodded. They only have one enchantment right now, but in the future, there will be many enchantments that go into potions. There will be more magic mixed in, during the brew, rather than just at the end. I hear you're good at making potions from scratch and getting them up to the very end point, but then you have to get points taken off for being unable to enchant them properly.
Maybe my rhyme is just off, Zin said. That happens a lot. Even yesterday, I missed something.
But Hyakti was shaking his head. He led Zin to the hammock, and the two sat down, causing it to rock gently.
Zin's heartbeat was picking up speed. Hyakti knew. He had to know.
In the obstacle course challenge, Hyakti persisted seriously, Khurshid set you up with Sarala on purpose.
What? Zin yelped indignantly.
Shush, Hyakti said in a quiet voice. No need to wake up everyone else just yet. I asked Khurshid to do that. He tried to stop me, but I told him to place you in her obstacle course.
Why?
Because you don't have your magic, do you?
Hyakti asked sadly. Zin could have sworn her heart stopped for a moment. She was silent, not knowing what sort of reply to give, a lump forming in her throat and preventing her from speaking even if she wanted to.
I thought that the obstacle course would help scare the magic out of you, Hyakti went on. But it didn't. Khurshid told me you just ran through it like a non-magical person and climbed up the final wall, after being hit plenty of times.
Zin winced at the memory. She unconsciously lifted a hand to her chest where she knew many bruises lurked, if she ever took a look at them. Hyakti stared at Zin for a long moment, then dropped his eyes and sighed.
I had a feeling this would happen.
Zin blinked in confusion, then growled, Wait, you knew I'd have no magic?
To be fair, your magic didn't come in that sparring match with me during the magic assessments, Hyakti pointed out. It only showed up at the very end, after we'd been going for so long. And after speaking with my teachers, I realized that you weren't just struggling due to a minor magic block. You're struggling because you don't have magic.
So you had the teachers test me, keep an eye on me? Zin sneered.
Hyakti dipped his head. I didn't want to believe it, but they kept coming to me, asking if I knew how much you were struggling. I tried asking Ren about it, but she told me you did have magic and performed it sometimes. I realize now that she was lying. He glanced up at Zen, a sadness in his violet eyes. I wish you told me about this magic problem yourself. Zen scowled, trying to ignore the guilt trickling through her veins. I know Ren's been helping you in classes, and I'm sure you are just trying to protect her as much as she's been lying to protect you, Hyakti went on. But this can't keep up for the next semester. Horror flooded through Zen. Hyakti was still going to make her drop school? He was going to prevent her from taking magic classes? But Dad, she cried out, what if my magic comes today, or tomorrow, or even the first day of the spring term? You can't make me stop taking classes just because my magic's late. Please, Dad. Hyakti shook his head. I honestly don't know what to do, he admitted, stroking one mustache strand. I've never had someone sneak in without magic before. Of course, there were a few students who tried, but they never got further than the magic assessments. In fact, of those who tried to get through the assessments without magic, none of them ever attempted the final test. You were the first, the most desperate.
Zen's lip curled back. She knew she was desperate for her magic to appear, but for Hyakti to just say it like that.
I don't blame you, Hyakti said. I would have been desperate for my own magic to appear, especially next to Ren, as she got her magic early. But Zin, now that we both know that I know about your magic, is there something holding you back? Is there anything that you can think of that'd be blocking off your magic if you do have it?
Zin frowned. It sounded like Hyakti still wanted to help her, to get her into the spring semester. Zin thought about what she mentioned to Ren the previous day, about her realization. Ren had asked if it had something to do with why she couldn't access her magic. Zin didn't think it would be, but what if she was right? But what if I'm wrong about this? Zin wondered, unable to term her realization. What if I've got it all wrong, and it's not the reason for my magic block at all? I mean, why should it be blocking my magic in the first place? And if I don't have magic, then do I actually have a magic block, or just no magic?
Is there anything at all, Zin?
Hyaktu asked quietly, his gaze intense. Zin sighed. No, Dad. Not that I can think of, she muttered. Hyaktu lowered his eyes again.
I'm afraid that if you don't show magical ability by the spring semester, I'm going to have to remove you from classes.
Zin snapped her gaze up to her father, her eyes wide. But Dad!
It's not fair to the other students, Hyaktu said. I wouldn't have allowed any of them to continue if I found out they had no magic. And it's not fair to your sister, making her work so hard on your behalf. And it's definitely not fair to you when you can't learn everything and have to struggle to keep up.
Hyaktu stared at Zin for a long moment, then pulled her into a tight hug.
I'm sorry, Zin, he whispered. I really am. It hurts so much to have to do this.
Then don't do it, Zin mumbled, not returning her father's embrace as warm tears slid down her cheeks. Don't take me out of classes. I can still learn.
But you can't put any of that knowledge to the test,
Hyaktu pointed out, his voice sad. Zin pulled away. Let me learn, please, Dad. I've wanted this for so long. Don't take it away from me. I can still study magic and plants and do martial arts. Why can't I keep learning? Hyaktu frowned thoughtfully.
I suppose you could realistically keep up the martial arts. Magic doesn't come in until the higher levels. Arts would be fine too, and probably magic studies. But both plants and potions are going to require magical skill next semester, and obviously magic channeling will get more challenging as you shift your focus from the environment around you to the magic inside you.
Some classes are better than none, Zin protested. Do you really want to homeschool me again, teaching me useless math and the same history lessons over and over? I don't want that. Hyaktu observed Zin for a long moment, then sighed.
I suppose you can keep up the non-magical classes, he said at last. If you are able to summon your magic by next semester, I will allow you to continue all of your classes. If not, it's just the non-magical classes for you.
Zin nodded, dropping her gaze. She was glad they were at least able to compromise, that she'd be able to stay in some classes. But how was she ever going to catch up with her magic? What if my realization does have to do with my magic being blocked off? She pondered again. Dad, what if I did have a magic block?
Hyaktu frowned. We would work all winter break to clear that block so you could summon your magic. Do you think you have a block?
Zin merely shrugged in reply.
If you think you do, then please tell me, Hyaktu said. We can work it out, together.
Zin sighed, then glanced over at her desk. Her eyes lit up, and she turned to her father. What if I used magic, but not my own, and not anyone else's magic either?
Hyaktu frowned, clearly confused.
Zin hopped off the hammock and went to her desk, picking up a cube. My magic objects, she explained. If I learned to use these, could I just use them in classes?
No,
Hyaktu said shortly, struggling to keep his balance on the swinging hammock.
That's still not using your own magic, and the enchantments will wear off the more you use them. Those objects do all sorts of things too, meaning you won't be doing the correct exercises in class, and then everyone would know you'd been cheating.
But if you take me out of classes, everyone will know I've been cheating anyway, Zin pointed out. And Ren, they're going to want to see us get punished, aren't they?
Hyaktu sighed. There will have to be some punishment, yes. I definitely don't appreciate you kids lying to me. I'll be talking to Ren about this later, too.
Zin's heartbeat quickened again. This is all my fault. Oh, please, don't take Ren out of classes, too. That wouldn't be fair to her at all. She was only trying to help.
I will have to think over what your punishments will be, Hyaktu said after a moment. But if your magic comes by spring semester, I will overlook everything that happened. You were already working with Ren in potions, and she didn't help you out in magic channeling. Neither of you cheated on the tests. But I will have to ask the teachers to take points off your homework assignments, for both of you.
Zin nodded quietly.
If the entire school ends up learning you don't have magic after all, that you and Ren cheated and you are removed from some classes, I'm afraid the punishment will have to be more severe, Hyaktu said briskly. And I will think more about these punishments next year.
Zin nodded again. Then she frowned. Isn't telepathy magic? She asked. I've been able to speak to you and Ren through thoughts for years. So I do have magic then, right? Hyaktu nodded, observing his palm as he created droplets of water and sent them spiraling into the air.
Yes, you have magic. Everyone has magic. But magic will lie dormant until puberty, most times. Even so, telepathy is a different type of magic altogether, and wouldn't count as the elemental magic we're discussing right now.
Zin opened her mouth to ask more questions, but Hyaktu pressed on before she could.
Now, Zin, are you sure there's nothing I can help you with? Even if you have the tiniest idea of what might be causing a magic block.
What causes a magic block? Zin asked flatly.
Surely Kershid's mentioned it in magic studies.
I just want to make sure, Zin replied.
Hyaktu shrugged. A magic block can be caused if you are suffering illness or injury, particularly the more severe they are. You're in perfect health, apart from a few bruises at the moment, I'm sure. So this shouldn't be the issue. But it can be blocked if you're undergoing a mental illness too, like depression or severe anxiety. With anxiety, your magic will typically still work, but it will be sporadic. With depression, the longer you're in depression, the more your magic will just shut off. Are you depressed, Zin?
I don't think so, she said honestly. I've had bad days this semester, but I still try to have fun.
Well, if you're dealing with depression, then we'll need to get you out of it, Hyaktu said. Let's say that you are depressed. You're not having bad thoughts, are you?
No, I'm not that depressed if I am, Zin assured her father swiftly. I like spending time with you and Ren and learning magic despite not having it. I like to play games and do martial arts. I enjoy living. I don't think depression is the issue.
Hyaktu nodded in relief. Well, if you think it is, then please let me know. We will get you the help you need. Can you think of anything else that might be holding you back?
Zin shook her head again, not even wondering about her realization.
Very well. My door is always open, Zin. I promise I will help you overcome whatever magical block you might be going through. Take the winter break to look inwards and find that block,
Hyaktu said firmly.
Of course, it could just be that your magic really isn't there, and that it's not blocked off if it's non-existent. It could come when you're closer to turning 15. There's no shame in being a late bloomer. Well, Zin, you know where to find me.
Hyaktu got to his feet and walked to Zin's side, giving her a small hug again. He then went to the door, glanced over his shoulder at Zin, offered her a smile, and left. Zin sighed and plopped on the wooden floor, not bothering to yell out the morning greeting. She walked over to her desk and rummaged around in the drawers, looking for her disc player. She didn't often use the disc player, as the family mirror played music just fine. But the mirror was currently in the family room, and she had no intention of going down the stairs to grab it. After a bit of searching, she took out the disc player, a metal box that she had painted rainbow, and an album by her favorite band, Unique. She put the disc into the player and hit the play button, then turned the volume down so it wouldn't disturb anyone. Once her music was playing, she walked to the door and locked it. Zin then sat on the floor again, ready to figure out her realization. She took a deep breath. "You can do this," she told herself. "You just gotta be strong and believe in yourself," she's saying in her head in time to the song. And with that, she pulled off her pajama top and threw it far away where she wouldn't be able to grab it and put it back on so easily. A shiver ran up her spine, but it wasn't due to the cool temperature in her room. Her torso was entirely covered in bruises, just as she knew it'd be. They were black, blue, purple, and yellow, each of them an ugly mark. But she'd still take them any day when compared to her body. Her heart pounded faster than it had when Hyaktu was in her room. It thrummed in her ears and pounded in her throat. Her whole body seemed to quiver in tune to its beat. The continuous thudding drowned out the sound of the music, the comfort of the song. "No," she kept repeating in her mind as she stared down in repulsion. "No, no, no!" But there was no denying the sight before her eyes. Tears flooded down her cheeks, her body tensed, her hands curled into fists at her sides. She had the sudden urge to rip her chest apart, to destroy what was attached to her. Forcing her fingernails into the wooden floor, she knew she had to hold back from hurting herself. "No, no, no, no!" "Zin, are you okay?" Ren's voice called. Zin ignored her. In fact, she didn't even hear her. "No, no, no, no!" Zin scraped the ground with her hands, trying to hold them in place. But she soon brought them up in front of her, in line with her chest, her fingers shaking from how much tension they held. Her eyes widened as she continued to stare down at her chest. Another thrill of panic and repulsion coursed through her. Her chest was definitely bigger than it had been when she started the semester. Wasn't it? Or was it just the way she was sitting on the ground? No, she had felt it more throughout the semester, even though she tried to deny it was there. But she couldn't dismiss its existence when she had no robe to cover her slim figure, when she was in the obstacle course with the stone hitting her chest so many times, as if to laugh that she was now burdened with this horror. Wrapping her arms around herself, she attempted to squish her chest out of existence, her nails stabbing into her back from how tightly she was holding on to herself. She closed her eyes and clenched her jaw shut, trying to keep from screaming. All she could feel was revulsion and panic and agony and a strong sense of helplessness. "I have to do something about this," she thought, trying to pull herself together. "Zin?" Ren called again. Zin hurried to the drawer where she kept her martial arts uniforms and sashes. She grabbed her white sash and tied it tightly around her chest, feeling a bit better. It's flat now. It's gone, she thought in relief. She took several deep sighs, then pulled on the feathery pajama shirt she tossed aside and grabbed a nearby sweater to add on top of that. She'd just have to wear extra clothes, that was all. Then nobody, not even herself, would be able to notice her chest. What about in the spring? She wondered. Hardly anyone wears sweaters, especially when it gets hotter. Oh no. What about summer? She shivered at the thought. Oftentimes, Hyaktu would take his daughters to the beach, where they'd each throw aside their shirts and run into the crashing waves, feeling the warm sun on their bare chests. It was very common for Galian people to be half naked in the hot temperatures, even outside the beach. Zin always felt uneasy seeing other half-naked people, especially if they had large chests. And now... Now I'm going to be one of them. No! No! Breathing shallow again, she sunk to the floor, closing her eyes. How could this be happening? She didn't ask for this. She never wanted anything but a flat chest. A sob escaped her. She placed a hand over her mouth, trying to keep the sound from echoing, but it was no use. Once one sob was out, more just followed. She couldn't stop the salty tears streaming down her brown cheeks and into her open mouth. She couldn't stop the thought of her bare chest from entering her mind. Shaking all over, all she wanted to do was shriek her agony to the world. Zin, open up! Ren screamed, rattling the door fiercely. What's wrong? Zin! Zin! No. Just end this. Make it stop. Make it go away. I don't want this. I never wanted this. I hate this. I hate this. Go away. Zin tore her clothes off again, throwing the sash aside. She knew she'd feel guilty later for disrespecting her uniform, but she didn't care in the moment. Go away! Zin shouted. Zin! Ren cried. Zin, what are you doing? By the time Ren, Hyaktu, and Sarala crashed through the door, Zin was lying on the ground, her arms wrapped around her bare chest. She had barely concealed her bruised body from sight before they entered. What's going on? Hyaktu demanded. Ren threw herself on the ground beside Zin. Zin, what happened? What are you doing? I failed, Zin moaned, closing her eyes tightly. She didn't want to see any of them, and she definitely did not want them to see her. I failed. You failed what? Ren asked urgently, shaking her sister. Zin rolled away from her, her body rattling with sobs. She was much too upset to speak, and she had no energy left to explain anything. Sarala, get Fern, Hyaktu ordered. Zin heard his footsteps come closer as Sarala's left, felt him crouch down next to her. Nobody spoke for a long moment, and Zin could almost see her father and sister exchanging worried glances. She felt a hand stroking her messy hair, knowing it was Hyaktu attempting to comfort her. Did she try hurting herself because you said you'd take her out of classes? Ren wailed at last, turning to Hyaktu. No, she was fine with it. We compromised. Zin, Hyaktu said, his stroking hand now shaking her. What happened? You were fine when I left. But Zin made no response, crying to her to say anything aloud, and her mind too shattered to respond by thoughts. Dad, what's wrong with her? Ren cried. Hyaktu didn't reply. Zin, what happened? Please, talk to me. Talk to Ren. Hyaktu's voice echoed in her mind. I failed. It was the only thing Zin could manage. She didn't know where her thoughts were going, whether they went to only one family member or both, or if they simply remained in her own head. What did you fail? Ren asked at once. What's wrong with you? Zin's mind clouded over. How could she explain any of this? Explaining it would mean she'd have to accept the fact that her body existed, and she wasn't prepared for that. What's wrong? Ren pressed. Zin could make out the sound of running footsteps. Fern and Sarala had entered the room. A move, Fern snapped briskly, clearly ushering Ren and Hyaktu out of the way. Zin soon felt the healer's hands on her bare skin. She flinched at the touch, but there was nowhere she could go. Fern pried Zin's arms away from her chest, and Zin screwed her eyes even tighter, the tears falling quicker. Why did Fern have to show off her body to everyone else? "Oh, Zin," Ren gasped. "Where did all these bruises come from?" Fern asked.
"My obstacle course," Sorala said meekly from the doorway.
She appears to be fine then," Fern murmured, more to herself than the others. "There are no other injuries." "Were you trying to... Ren didn't finish the sentence. "I want it gone!" Zin yowled, trying to squirm away from Fern. "I don't want this! I hate it! I hate my body!" Silence met her ears. The unique song continued to play softly in the background, the only sound in the room. She was tempted to open her eyes, but didn't want to make eye contact with anyone. She was more humiliated than she had ever been in her life. Her chest ached, from the bruises, and even from her heart pounding so much. "Why didn't you say anything?" Ren wailed, and she flung herself at Zin. "This is your realization, isn't it? Your magic block? Oh, Zin."
"Fern, is there something we can do about this?" Hyaktu asked. "Do you have a potion that can make her chest flat?"
Fern sighed from somewhere near Zin. "I'd have to brew one up, but you know it's illegal, Hyaktu."
Not anything long term," Hyaktu said quickly. "Just something that she can take for now, to keep her chest flat."
Zin opened her blurry eyes at last, to peer up at her father over Ren's shoulder. Hyaktu was staring at Fern, who now stood up. Sorala gazed from one to the other. Nobody was looking at Zin. "I suppose I could do it, but that still requires..."
"I know what it requires," Hyaktu said shortly. "We will get the permission necessary. But for now, while Zin is figuring things out, can you give her a potion?"
Fern sighed. "Yes, but I'll only make enough for 1 month. You better get the necessary healer permissions if you want her to continue taking the potion."
"We will, if this is the route Zin wants to go,"
Hyaktu promised. Zin was confused. What were they talking about? But her mind was too muddled and drained to question it any further.
"Can you heal her bruises too?"
Hyaktu asked Fern. "Easily," Fern replied.
"And the shock?"
"Who do you think you're talking to?" Fern snapped, causing Hyaktu to take a step back and lift his hands in front of him. "I'll have her healed up in no time. She'll be back in class to take her last test on free day." And with that, Fern shooed Ren away from Zin, put a sweater over Zin's head, and picked her up like she weighed nothing. The healer then left the room, slipping Zin a small vial. "Drink it," she ordered as she walked down the stairs. Zin opened the vial with a bit of difficulty, feeling embarrassed as she was carried away. She drank the sour potion and fell asleep before they were even out in the bitter cold.